What's up? How you doing? I am David Long. Hope you're doing well today.
I want to talk about this idea of developmental height versus a vastness. Let me try and explain what I mean by this. We always talk about stages of development, or like certain ideas coming from particular stages of development. But you know how there's a generation gap between you and your parents? You feel like you're smarter than them. You're like, I clearly get things that they just can't even begin to grasp. So you have a developmental height over them. But in certain levels of development, they have a vastness of perspective and understanding that you just don't have. And this is true about past stages of development too. Like all of our survival skills are super narrow, whereas like tribal people or people who lived so long ago that we think, oh, these people are super primitive. But when it comes to the vastness of their knowledge about survival and what the artifacts are at these lower stages of human development, they know the most. And when it comes to that stuff, they're there. And I think this is what we see in like boomer and zoomer type integralists too. Even in my own perspective, being new and young, I feel like I see things that these people don't see. They're super smart. No one's going to deny that. The older generation, like Ken Wilber, for example, Ken Wilber's super smart. He's got a vastness of knowledge of artifacts at these different levels that I do not have. It's just a fact. When it comes to the vastness in particular subjects, he's got it. But when it comes to height and the ability to actually make important distinctions and to do it right, someone maybe younger who knows a couple of the right moves to pivot to get up higher can do it without the vastness. And in fact, the vastness is something that you can actually get lost in. This is actually what slows down some people's development, is they get lost in the vastness. You can kind of like quick run up the spiral, but it doesn't mean that you have like a vastness of knowledge at different stages. So a lot of what you see happens is like people at these integral stages, especially younger people, and by younger I mean like 30-ish, they get up to these integral stages and they go, oh, I need to go back down and like reintegrate and reorganize and like reconsider these perspectives and dig into the details of this and dig into the details of that. And they can get all in the vastness. Sometimes you get caught in the vastness at a particular level, like more and more interested in what's going on there. And that can potentially slow your growth. Also, you can rush up the spiral, rush your growth, and then have to go back down and still work on some of the vastness and getting in touch with all the artifacts at those levels to really understand the bigger picture. You could say it's like something like nearsighted and farsighted. The person who rushes up the spiral has a more narrow perspective, might be more right, but doesn't mean that you're more skillful or that you're more knowledgeable. Those are different things. Sometimes when I feel like I'm getting it right while other people are getting it wrong, and yet they're super smart. It's not that they're not smart, and they do have like a vastness of knowledge that I just don't have. But I think that's what it is. This is my idea of how to start to talk about this. There's also like a sunk cost thing that happens, right? Where it's like the more you invest in studying Buddhism and the conversation and the wording of Buddhism, and the more you're just like push into that, like you might have a vast knowledge of the conversation of Buddhism, but that whole thing could totally cloud your thought process if you're not paying equal attention to other traditions and other things and other perspectives. Sometimes a vastness of knowledge in a particular level of development can puff you up. And sometimes there's like little trinkets at every stage. And it's like, if you see that thing, then you have to grapple with it. And it can probably like mess up your perspective in some kind of way or tweak it in some kind of way where it's like, yeah, but there was that one thing that I saw or experienced, and that still confuses me, or that's making me bias in this kind of way. So it takes a while to wring out some of the personal bias out of your own development. And yeah, maybe if you don't spend so long in the lower stages, you get what's necessary, learn the lessons, get the boons, make the distinctions, scurry your way up without getting too lost in the vastness of all the different artifacts and conversations and stuff. Like, do I really need to know about the nuances of every conspiracy theory? Do you think if I went in and started studying conspiracy theories to like really know about it, that couldn't confuse me? You know what I mean? I think it could. I think you could get to the point where you're like, but I do think there might be something to this. You know, there's probably, and maybe there is. I'm not saying all conspiracy is bullshit. Capitalism is like, you get people with power in back rooms talking about power and money. That's just like what you do if you're a capitalist. You try to figure out how to get money. Anyways, there is a vastness of knowledge to be had at every stage of development. There is shadow work potentially to be done at every stage of development that you got to go back down and clear out. There's confusions potentially at every stage of development, little trinkets that can distract your mind and fuck up your progress and confuse you along the path? What's the balance between pursuing height and getting the vastness of the details? Like maybe there's some kind of a balance, but it also depends on the person. Like I felt like I was behind when I was first starting to wake up. So I feel like I rushed through orange and green and got to integral. Like, I mean, I saw a lot of artifacts and got a pretty good idea of a good amount of the vastness on these different stages. But I mean, like, am I a scientist? Not by any means. Am I super knowledgeable about all of the nuances of different New Age perspectives and stuff? No. To me, like I was coming out of Christianity. A lot of that stuff, the stuff that was like clearly superstitious, crazy shit, I was like, okay, I see that. It's interesting that you say that. I don't believe you. I'm not going to spend too much time with this. Yeah, I get it. Like I see what this is. I'm good. I don't need to spend hours and hours and hours and buy his book and like read all of his things and all this stuff to know what this guy's talking about. It's an interesting phenomenon. I know. I saw what this guy was doing too. He was doing something similar. All right, I'm good. You spent enough time on that to know what it's about, to like prioritize it in terms of like knowledge to be had on that level, right? So there's a prioritization that should happen within the vastness of artifacts at every stage of development. I think it's good to focus in on what the highlights are. Who are the main voices that people will all reference? And then maybe figure out who are the people who are on the sidelines or the peripherals of that conversation, and like, who are those people referencing, and trace it down a little bit. And really, that's all you need to know, I think, to get like a meta-analysis of the vastness of knowledge and artifacts at each stage. You want to know what are the different categories, who's the best representative of each one of these kinds of groups, what's the conversations that they're having. If you know what's going on, if you know, oh yeah, the Urantia book is a New Age book that is talking about Jesus, and it's written by a group of mediums who are like channeling an alien or something like that. It's like, oh, okay, that's an interesting phenomenon. File that away as another crazy subcategory of green Christian expression. There's other ones as well. Add it to the list. But if you know what they are and what they're doing in general, you just want the meta-analysis. The problem is that some people get distracted by some of the bullshit of these different archetypes and artifacts at different stages, and they get confused, and it fucks up their perspective. So the way to navigate is to try to get the meta-analysis at whatever level, and to try to understand all the perspectives and to move on. Especially if we're talking about, as an integralist, going back down the spiral and trying to reorganize and reintegrate. It's like, okay, well, who are the thinkers at this level? What are the different variations on the theme? What are the different categories? Parse it all out and try to figure out where your strong and weak points are, and then go to work on some of those weak points. Try to understand what's going on there, see how it relates to these other parts. And this is how you can get the vastness without getting bogged down in the details. I think a good integration is not just about necessarily having the right distinctions, but also the right attitude and a good method of integration in terms of how you're going to filter through and organize knowledge is super helpful too. Okay, I think I'm done. I already have a vastness of editing to do on different content, so I'm going to keep it short. I hope you guys enjoyed this talk about height versus vastness. And I hope this maybe makes sense of some of your encounters with other integralists, Zoomer versus Boomer, integral interactions. Maybe it makes sense of your experiences with your parents. Maybe it gives us an appreciation of other people down the spiral, the vastness of their knowledge on particular subjects or in particular issues and topics and lines and stuff like that. At a certain point, you just get into the details of the references to back up the claims you or the other is making at the top of the concept or idea. It seems like having vastness will allow you to defend ideas from multiple perspectives of criticisms, while height allows you to make more nuanced distinctions, but with potentially a less of an ability to back the claims up that you make. Right, exactly. It's like, I know that evolution is true, but I mean, could I sit here and explain it to you like a scientist? No, I don't have the vastness of knowledge about that. Anyways, thanks for watching. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Support me on Patreon, and I will see you next time. Peace.